And a bit about tonight's presenters before we get started. Jordan Garcia is Los Alamos County's Power Supply Supervisor, in charge of the pre-schedule and real-time activities for power supply, and has been with the county for 10 years. Stephen Marez is Los Alamos County's Electrical Engineering Manager. He's in charge of the electric distribution crews who perform the operations and maintenance for Townsite and White Rock, and has been with the county for 21 years. Awesome. Thank you so much to you both for being with us here tonight. And I'm going to turn it over to you and monitor the chat for questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having us. We'll get kicked off in here. We wanted to start first with sort of update on everyone on our progress to our 2040 carbon neutral goal. I don't know if everyone had knowledge that we convened a Future Energy Resources Committee a few years ago, and the board adopted a policy of carbon neutrality by 2024. We wanted to give you an overview of sort of what's going on in our shop and how close we are to getting there. As you can see, first off, we have our two hydros, Abiquiu and Alvaro in northern New Mexico. They give us roughly 35,000 megawatt hours of energy annually. There's some big projects coming up. Alvaro Dam is going to get restored, and there's some projects at Abiquiu going on too that are going to affect our output. But overall, and long-term strategy, these are great resources for us to have. We also have a long-term Wapa hydro allocation. This is sourced out of Glen Canyon in northern Arizona and comes here and is part of our asset mix. We also have the solar 1 megawatt PV at the landfill station over here. It used to be coupled with batteries, but we have all but decommissioned the batteries now. And yes, sir. About the batteries, we no longer use the batteries. The lead acids, there was two different kinds of batteries. There's a sodium sulfur, which has to operate about 300 degrees centigrade, be kept that hot, and it takes a lot of energy to keep it at that. So it really wasn't economical for us to continue operations with it. And the lead acid was having quite a trouble, and these are very specific cells, and they're very expensive to replace. So all we have is the 1 megawatt solar left currently. In addition, this year we just signed our, it's a 15 megawatt wind and solar deal packaged. So it's 15 megawatts firm around the clock. Every hour on the hour we'll receive 15 megawatts of energy from a supplier called Uniper. The wind is coming from eastern New Mexico, and the solar will be coming from San Juan in the Four Corners area. So both already on P&M system readily available projects. The wind is ready to go. We are actually going to start flowing this energy January 1st of 2022. And the solar will come on about an hour. About a year and a half later. Right now with the COVID constraints and supply chain issues, it's been delayed somewhat, but it will be running by mid 2023 as intended. So the question now is we're going to get 100,000 megawatt hours in 2023. The total supply is about 131,400 megawatt hours, sir, but it's about 78% renewable. So we are expecting about 100,000 megawatt hours of renewable energy from the asset. And yes, sir, we are planning that in 2023. That gives Los Alamos a total production, renewable energy production, or non-carbon emitting production of about 141,000 megawatt hours. And just to keep that in mind, our annual between White Rock and Los Alamos, the annual load is around 120,000 megawatt hours. So we will be very close to our carbon neutral goal by 2023 when it comes online. We get into some other things with the contract, right, based on who takes ownership of the assets with the lab, but that contract is being renewed in 2025, and we're looking at what we can do to hopefully meet our goal early. So just keep that in mind. Just an FYI here, Llano's annual consumption, our partner across the bridge, is about 410,000 megawatt hours annually with plans to grow. We wanted to show you this slide sort of out into the future, 2042, what we expect for Los Alamos County. Now, this is just Los Alamos County. That black line is Los Alamos County load. you can see right now in 2022, we have almost all of our resources online. We're going to be expecting the 15-year deal starting in January. These are our FYs. But you can see we're quite oversupplied because of San Juan. San Juan will be coming off in 2022. And then that's what the big drop is in 2023 forward. We carry on our 15-year deal with an option to renew and come in 2036. We're also keeping an eye on a small modular nuclear reactor in 2030. Roughly about 8 megawatts of supply to the county is what we're looking for at this time. And with that, you can see LRS, we went out to 2042 because we plan the Laramie River Station will be our last coal asset, and we expect it to retire in about 2040, 2042 timeframe. So just keep in mind, and again, we're pretty oversupplied currently. Now, this is a combined load graph between LANL or Triad and us, the county. You can see those orange bars are purchased power. So that's all the energy needs that we cannot meet with owned resource, and we have to go out into the open market and somehow and try to fill the gap. We are at the bottom, that black solid line. LANL is the line on top that's dotted. And then the further line is our combined load together. So you can see there's some big things going on. They have they have gas generation on TA3. I'm sure you all are aware of the steam plant and the CGTG. So they have some contributing resources out there as well. They have a combined, it's a gas turbine generator, sir? Yes, sir. And they're hoping to make that a combined cycle unit heat and power, potentially in 2024, but they're still evaluating that project. But our power needs are growing, and we are keeping in mind any type of renewable assets that are out there. We did something very unique with that 15-year deal in order to, they are firming it. Firm energy is what's important to us. Steve wants to talk about a little bit about intermittency on the distribution system. But, having the units go on and off with clouds and wind stoppage, it's a big deal for us, and being able to provide reliable power to all of you in the county. So firm energy is very important to us, and we were able to do this using a market mechanism. So it's a pretty unique deal, and we're very proud of it. And we're going to be looking for more unique things sort of out of the box into the future to meet our power needs. So with that, we just sort of made a list about sort of pros and cons from our perspective and what we think from the homeowner's perspective. So this is our best attempt. We really know the DPU perspective, but the homeowner's perspective is a little different, but we'll give that next. One of the big pros is rooftop solar lowers county daytime peak power demand, right? We know that that's pretty valuable to us, especially with our contract with the laboratory. However, unless people have batteries and things of that nature, right when the sun goes down, everybody has power needs, and that's pretty stable throughout the West, right? Things that we consider cons from our perspective at the county. Under the current net metering rate structure, rooftop solar customers are being subsidized because they're avoiding the wires charge. We have one of the most generous net metering programs in the entire nation in Los Alamos County, and we really need to look at it in terms of a business, because it's really unsustainable to have a business like that right now. So $11.5, yes, sir. So the question outstanding is, if you're paying 11 cents for residential usage from the county, how much do we pay you for you to pump energy onto the system? Mr. Marez, we'll talk about that later, but just to give you something to chew on, we give you back the credit at your retail rate, right? But then that we only go up at the retail rate until meet your usage, so you can zero out. Anything above that, we will give you the wholesale value of the energy. It's variable right now. It goes from about 4 cents to about 6.5 cents. So, and just so think about that in your mind when Mr. Marez talks about it earlier. I think it's a good introduction, and you might have some other questions come up a little bit later on about that. Again, the county must firm up all intermittent resources like rooftop solar. This includes residential customers. We're beholden to a balancing authority, that is PNM. They are sort of our babysitter. We act as a sub-balancing authority in their area, but we have to firm up our own energy and be able to manage it. The county must meet evening peak load after sunset without solar plus storage, sort of what I just told you. Everybody's relying on the county when the sun goes down, everyone, whether you have residential solar or not, right? Correct, sir. Unpermitted connections pose a safety hazard to DPU line crews. So this gets very much into the permitting process, which Mr. Marez will elaborate on further. We looked about, we did a survey and had a few customers sort of respond as to what their solar contracts look like. And so what we think is that, again, one of the pros from the homeowner's perspective, we're giving this our old college try, right? The net metering rate structure offsets the entire electric bill. That is the huge pro. And the pro is you're also contributing your own renewable energy, which is very important to people and to the environment. Some of the cons we thought and that we've heard of through our survey were permitting process delays from the county and utilities, post-installation O&M. I think that was a little confusing for some of the people. Some of it's wrapped into your contract, some of it's not wrapped into your contracts. Operations maintenance, sir. So degradation of the panels, if something happens and shorts out. So the question is, what is post-installation O&M? That's operations and maintenance. Who's responsible? Is it the homeowner? If you're leasing it, does the company, are they responsible for coming and fixing any issues with your net metering program or the production? Or if you buy it outright, is it just you? Do you have an O&M contract that's available to you? You know, the little dust particles when we get those New Mexico rainstorms, right? They're, you know, the one water droplet with all the dust on it, that can affect your production quite a bit. If, you know, who's going to get up there and clean your panels periodically, all that good stuff, sir. So Mr. Modest is going to get into that in his, so the question was if I can get into a little bit more into permitting process delays, and Mr. Modest has a whole section on that. So if that's okay. Thank you, sir. It's not available to all the locations in the community. If you have a well-shaded area or you don't have a roof that's south facing, you're out of luck a little bit, right? And so how do you even out people who have the ability versus people who don't? That's sort of the crux of the question. You know, net metering is here, but it's not always here to stay. Like I said, it's not really a feasible business strategy the way we currently do it. So that will diminish and change the rate of return that's been projected whenever you put it on your roof. It's just something to consider. And potentially cost if the utility is going to go carbon neutral, right? And I guess I should have put that as a DPU one. You know, we have a carbon neutral goal, and you can see utility scale renewables are much cheaper than going about it in a single, like a home, right? So some of the things that we think about when we do that. And with that, Mr. Modest will take over from here.
Hello, can you guys hear me fine?
Yes, sir.
Hello, Jordan.
Yeah, we can hear you, Marez. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, yeah, what was my introduction earlier? I'm Stephen Marez. I'm the electric engineering manager. All solar installations within the county pass through my office for design approval, sizing approval, and then find the final net metering installation and the agreement, you know, completing the agreement with the homeowner for the purchase of the power. So to begin with, on the permitting process, you know, online at the county website, you can go on, if you can even Google Los Alamos County solar installations, it'll take you to the website that has all of the documentation necessary, including the utility application, the county application, and some information about the state CID Construction Industries Division. You know, the permitting process is necessary to ensure that the systems are built to the county and the NEC electric code. County has, some specifications on the system that are required. There's a diagram within the permitting packet that shows how the configuration of the system should be connected. One of the main things the county looks for is the exterior disconnect, so that we can, if we do have to work on your service line or on your meter, we can disconnect the solar system for safety reasons. And like I said, the permitting process involves several entities: County Community Development Department, CDD, the Utility Department, and State Construction Industries Division. Next slide, please, Jordan. Okay, the Los Alamos County Community Development Department,
He
the
actually can't hear
application.
you from Zoom. I'm so sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Could you mind?
Okay, the application for construction is required by CDD. CDD will review and approve the physical installation of the system, which includes the structural components, how it's attached to your building, to make sure your wind loads and it is attached safely and adheres to the county codes. Next slide, please. Okay, in the Department of Public Utilities, in my office, the application is required. The application is a straightforward information, the customer's information, the installer's information, and then a diagram and a site plan of how the system is going to be installed. And I will be reviewing to make sure that it conforms to the configuration that we require. And then once I approve that the application, I inform the customer or the installer that it is approved through the utility. Then I will look to see that it is approved for construction through the county CDD department. Next slide, please. Okay, now the State Construction Industries Division. Each system must be installed by a certified electrician and or a qualified person. That person would apply for a permit through the state. The state has jurisdiction over the electric system and anything that is attached to the house up to and including the meter base. And in many cases, a customer is increasing the size of their service panel. Many structures in the county are 100 amp size or smaller, and customers are upgrading to 200 amp services. And so that all falls under the state jurisdiction. Next slide, please. Okay, the permitting process. Okay, why we do it is, for the safety and protection of the customer. Be safe and reliable. The correct physical installation prevents damage to the home and property, and of course, the correct electric connection of the system will prevent any damage or physical injury to the customer or the utility line crews. One of the main reasons I look for the specifications of the inverter and the disconnect is to ensure that in the case of an outage in the system, and a customer is not backfeeding into the system, because even a 120 volt backfeed, once it goes through the transformer, will increase to over 7,000 volts. And so it's a very unsafe situation. I'd say all inverters that are being installed now on the solar systems will automatically disconnect once the utility loses power. So there is no backfeed. Many customers, through the people selling the systems are telling them that when the utility loses power, they will have, power in their home, but that is not the case unless you have a battery backup and a transfer switch. Many customers, well, not many, but I have about a half dozen customers who are starting to install devices such as the Tesla Powerwall with the gateway, and that supplements their power, and they will have power when the utility goes dark. Many customers are, of course, buying electric cars. So installation of the components for electric charging are important. Next slide, please. The sizing of the system, the county requires that the system be sized to offset the customer's current consumption. And we look at the annual average of consumption over the last year. There are cases where the customer will apply for a variance in, if they are upgrading their home at the time of the installation, from a 100 amp service to a 200 amp service. They're buying an electric car or doing some refrigerated air. That kind of information will need to be included in the application to justify oversizing the system beyond the last year's consumption. Without that information, the application will be rejected, and I will request a justification for the oversizing. Next slide, please. Okay, now in net metering is the process of measuring the customer's consumption and the customer's production. Now the utility will install the net meter after the CID and CDD both approve the construction of the system. Then at that point, myself or my line crew will go and we will install or reprogram the meter to perform as a net meter. The net meter will register power in two directions and give two readings. The first reading is delivered power, and the second reading is received power. And that's from the utility's point of view. So power received is the measure of the customer's production of power that we purchase, and power delivered is the measure of the customer's consumption of the power. Now it's measured in kilowatt hours, and you'll see that on your bills. And for example, a 1,000 watt space heater, on for 1 hour will consume 1 kilowatt hour of energy. Next slide, please. Okay, now here I have a copy of an example bill that's in our system right now. You can see there will be two items there of electricity. The first is the delivered, and you can see it measures the previous read and a current read, and it is a debit. And then the second electric readings are from the power received, and you can see that is a credit on the bill. And this will occur on a monthly basis. Next slide, please. Okay, now at the end of the calendar year, the total annual consumption and production of the customer will be reviewed. And if a customer produces an excess over the entire year, then that excess beyond their consumption value is readjusted from the retail rate down to the wholesale rate. So the customer would receive a debit on their bill. Now here at the bottom, I have an example that 100 kilowatts of excess production would be about $3, but that was before I adjusted with Jordan's help, the wholesale rate. So it would actually be about $5 or $6 per 100 kilowatt hours of excess production. And so that's why sizing it to offset, your consumption is important. It keeps it balanced. Any excess, that we purchase, takes away from our revenues. The utility operates solely on the revenues that it receives from the sale of the power. Next slide, please. Okay, now I don't know if Jordan might want to step in on this one here.
So just some of the structure. Thanks, Marez. Thank you. Some of the things about the structure of the utilities department. We don't rely on gross receipts tax, much like the general county. We run solely on the customers that are connected to our system and pay for our products, right? So we only go from revenue rate. Those current customers that are allowed to offset their entire bill pay absolutely nothing, even though, like I said, when the sun goes down, they're receiving energy just like everyone else. So something that we're looking at. Currently, all the distribution costs, wires, poles, transformers are collected through a commodity charge. So we have what's called a bundled rate. We do everything all at once, where we don't separate out the ability to have utility power access, right? So you're able to offset all of that. But during the day when you're producing and you're not home, don't have a air conditioner on or anything like that, you're using the utility, right, to basically buy back your energy, and then you're taking power off the grid. So think about it in that terms. And rooftop customers use the grid during the evening peak times. So exactly what I said, right? When the sun goes down, everybody's using the utility. And it's sort of a fairer way to distribute all of the cost instead of letting them offset completely. There's a question. Yes, sir. So the question, and for us, is the retail and the wholesale rate is a difference of about 7 cents. What is that difference? That difference is the distribution system, sir. So if you were to look at Mr. Modest and myself, Mr. Modest is everything after the huge substations to be able to deliver power to your door. I'm all of the transmission assets, all of the major generating contracts, all of those things to be able to supply Mr. Modest's system.
So the 7 cents is for infrastructure?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
So why do you say that the solar people aren't paying for infrastructure?
They're able to offset all of the usage, sir. So they're using they're using the lines when they're overproducing. They're using the lines to sell to their neighbors or to help the utility, or, you know, to put on the grid. They're using the lines. And then when the sun is not shining anymore, they're taking power from the grid.
I understand that, but everything that they sell to you, they're like a power provider and they're selling it to you at 4 cents.
Yeah, I
So
can.
they're providing something that allows you, the difference allows you to handle the infrastructure.
Yes, sir. So the comment in front of us is, oh, I'm sorry, 1 second. I'm getting a hand raise. Oh, okay. So the comment in front of us is they're providing us power. Is that, and what was the other portion, sir? I'm sorry.
Well, since they provide it at wholesale prices, but that 7 cents, you don't have to pay. And therefore, that must look like a profit.
So, okay, so the question is that we're avoiding the 7 cents and I'm getting that for 4 cents. But really what happens is this infrastructure costs money, right? We've invested money into all of these assets. That goes for the wholesale assets before the substation and after. So you have all of these costs and debt service that you're paying on these assets, but you're getting no contribution from the people who are using the system. All of that contribution, in order to pay that, is the people who are remainingly connected to the system and do not have net metering options. That's who's paying for all of those assets that are allowing you to be a power producer. Yes, sir.
You don't get 4 cents. You get the full retail, you get the full retail value. And I've been doing this for a number of years, and the only time that you don't get the full retail value for what you put out on the grid is if you produce more than what you use over a 1-year lifetime. Okay, so I mean, basically the county is providing the backup and telling you don't have to do energy storage, and they're doing it for free. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. There.
I think there's, yeah, what you're saying is that we're paid if we have this customer resale value for what we put out, not wholesale. We're paying them, you're paying us the higher price. I mean, we're paying, yeah. For that solar.
Right. So the comment and question is that we are paying the higher price for the output from the customer. That is correct. Up to the point where you overproduce. So we offset all of your energy. We look at it in terms of energy, right? We're not even talking about demand right now. all of your energy that you produce, we'll give you what you consume back at the wholesale rate, so the most expensive, and then we'll buy everything else from you at the wholesale. So you have the potential to possibly make money off of this. You will offset all of your line charges or the fixed charges on your bills annually, and then you have the ability to pocket cash basically, or take in money, create revenue. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And the comment was until we change it to make more reasonable, and he's correct. So with that, that's the end of our show. And I know that there's probably some questions online we might want to get to. So, or
We'll give folks a question or a minute to type in their question, since it's a little bit harder for them. But I'm going to ask, if you do have a question in the room, we have a fairly long microphone cord and people online are just having trouble keeping up. So I'm going to have you actually come back to me, because it's not that long, it turns out. It's like to hear.
Thank you for the presentation. My question is, do you currently have all the permitting and whatnot in place for people to be able to install battery storage? Is it, if we wanted to do this tomorrow and buy a Tesla Powerwall or something, are you guys set up to be able to make that happen?
so I will let Mr. Marez take that question, because he's dealing with those. I think about 6 of those right now.
Yes, if the power, that would be included in your application and your design. And if the specifications of, the Tesla Powerwall and the gateway that is the transfer switch that accompanies it are acceptable, those are, top of the line. There have been several people who are looking at installing some other newer type devices that are coming on the market. And I will review those. And if it has a complete isolation capability from the system, then I will approve it. And it will go forward with the state approval also, because you are actually, installing electric components on your structure. But yes, it is possible and very much ready to go.
Awesome. So we're queuing up on in room for questions, but we have 2 that came in online, and I'll ask one right now from Lynn Jones. What does the $12 service charge cover?
That is supposed to cover being connected. Marez, I think you have a better insight on that one.
The $12 service charge, again, that goes towards the overhead of the utility, the operation of customer service, billing, and just the overall straight, I'd say the human resource mostly, as far as I understand it.
I have sort of 2 questions. The general theme is the following. Under the present way of doing things, you make people trying to stop using carbon energy have a very difficult time. And you have very good reasons for that, because you're still operating on a 1990s way of looking at your utilities. The first one is, how do I answer people who say the dumbest thing I ever heard was that when the power goes off, suddenly our solar panels can't be used in our house? And you say, well, that's because it would endanger the people working on the lines. But anybody who knows how to do a little bit of electrical setup can switch that so that automatically nothing goes out to the grid, it just goes to the house, but you don't do it. Why is that?
That is a customer's, a customer can install a transfer switch and, enable their home to have that capability. But that is part of the customer's design and the customer's specifications and permit. And like I said, when they install batteries, they have to have the transfer switch. And the same with, even if they chose to use for example, a gas powered generator, they would have to have a transfer switch in order to isolate their system from the utility. And
Thanks so much for that
is
answer,
acceptable
because
to do.
thanks so much for that answer, because that's a good answer. We were being told that wasn't possible. So you've corrected that. The other one is for the
Yes.
county to really make use of solar. Each unit in the homes has to have storage. For instance, at night and in peak time and this and that, so they can take that extra power. And I'm inviting the county to look at what other communities are doing. Several other communities in the United States have decided to buy the power walls or whatever storage for each unit that has solar, and to then rent, essentially lease those to the owner. It's the county owns it. It's in the unit, in the homeowner's unit. And therefore the county gets the benefit of being able to use that. Is there any consideration of doing something like that?
So, yes, oh, go ahead, Marez.
No, I was going to say, not to my knowledge, unless you have something there, Jordan.
Yes, we're researching some of the other utilities around the United States right now. One of the companies that was brought to our attention was a company called Green Mountain Power. And our supervisor, Steve Cummins, as I think he's getting ready to get in touch with them and kind of see what's going on. You know, different systems have different valuations and different needs. So it's just a matter of looking at theirs and seeing what makes sense and see where we can apply that, if we can, to our system as well. So yes, sir, we're actively pursuing those.
Awesome. Thank you for those questions. So we have a few online, but we're going to try to alternate back and forth. So several years ago, the possibility of neighborhood solar gardens was mentioned. Is that still a possibility?
It sort of fell by the wayside, but we are beginning talks about it again. The more we look at it, you know, one of the things on the hard parts about living in Los Alamos is the land availability. That's what makes it really hard for us. We would really like to have these resources either, well, we really like them right behind the meter. That's where they do us the most good. But we don't have a lot of land available, but it's something that we are actively pursuing. We looked at the other half of the landfill, and it sort of didn't make sense at the time. And I think the board rejected that process as well as some other ones, but it's starting to make a little more sense now with what's going on in the markets, these freezes and you know, that you've seen that drive up pricing, these major heat waves that are driving up pricing. So a lot of it is coming back to being more financially viable, and we're starting to investigate. And so the short answer to that is yes. And sorry for that long spiel.
So I have two questions. I think one of them's quick, but if you want to get somebody in between the two of them, or I can go to the end of the line. My first question is, both of my neighbors directly to the west of me, both the first two next to me, both have full solar arrays in their backyard. I'm in La Senda, so they're not on the roof. Does that impact if are putting one in? So you have 3 houses in a row. Does that have any impact on, you know, too much power? Or I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. Does it matter that we're all 3 of us, or?
Yes, ma'am. And I'm going to let Mr. Marez take that specifically, but on a very high level answer, yes. The more you put on one single like feeder, for example, so we're all tied up in different feeders, right? And the more that you introduce to each feeder, every fluctuation that you have affects the voltage for that particular feeder. So yes, it can affect it in negative ways and positive ways sometimes, but I'll let Mr. Marez get into that in more detail.
Yeah, in the case of you know, multiple systems on a single street, the biggest impact we have right now is sizing the transformer. Our rate structure, our permit fee that when you apply for solar, I believe the permit fee is a couple of $100. That includes if a transformer were needed to be upgraded, that fee, you know, your fee would account for that. Conductor sizing, you know, if if we continue to expand the systems down these neighborhoods, it may be necessary to increase the size of the conductors, reconductoring, overhead or underground systems and transformers. Right now, we don't have a real problem with, as Jordan was saying, harmonics or any voltage fluctuations. Each system's inverter, is converting to AC, but they are not all, operating at exactly the same. So there will be, it increases the noise on the system, and so that in the future will become may become an issue. But right now, just the biggest problem is the sizing of the transformers and making sure that the system is capable of handling the load.
Okay, I don't want to hog, but what if, is this a permitting issue if we just decided to say, put in enough solar in the back to charge an electric vehicle? It wasn't going to the house, it wasn't, it's going to a battery. Does that need to be permitted? Or if you have something on your shed in the back that's just gonna,
If
run
you're
outside?
if you're not tied to our electric system, then you do not require a permit through the county. You may require a state permit because it is still an electric installation in an occupied area, and and so an electrician would be required to install that system.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
All right, so we have several questions on Zoom. This one's from Beth. Why aren't there any fixed charges for maintaining the grid, in parentheses, that aren't offset by any power generation?
That's a great question, and part of that is what we are hoping to change with the rate structure when we get to it. Part of this, we really wanted to incentivize solar installations, and I'll give you a great for example. So I started 10 years ago in November, and at the time we had 16 net meter customers. We now have over 350 or 380, I believe, with about 30 in the queue. So it's getting up there. And it's just something that we've had our eye on. It requires an unbundling of rates, which is a little bit more complicated and sort of the structure involved. But that's exactly what we're talking about and looking at currently.
I've got a couple of questions. The first one is, if you get serious about moving all of the heating and air conditioning load and the transportation load over here, probably your utility usage is going to go up by about a factor of 2 to 3. And I'm wondering if you've got plans on that in terms of your projections out to 2040.
So yes, sir. As we speak right now, there's an IRP. It's an integrated resource plan study. It's in the process. We delivered a short introduction and sort of what we were looking at to the customers. I believe it was November 5th. There should be a video that it was presented to the Board of Public Utilities. So there should be a video online on the website. But that's exactly what we're talking about right now. We're talking about electrification and natural gas conversions. And you are absolutely correct, sir. The load outlook for those is enormous. And it's something that we're looking at, but not only for ourselves, even for ourselves, we're looking at about double to triple, just like you said. But now you include the laboratory about that and all of their fleet vehicles and things of that nature, and sort of what federal mandates they have. So the electric consumption looks to be pretty incredible in the coming years.
My second one is just an observation, and what you're saying is correct in terms that, you're not charging people for the off-hour usage when the sun goes down. The flip side of that is there's no monetary incentive to do energy storage. And if you guys would come up with a variable rate program that would monetize that for people who want to go that route, I think you'd get more of a response on it.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that suggestion. I think it's something that we've talked about in the future, especially now that we have the advanced metering infrastructure. That was sort of, I guess, a crossroads for us. And before we really did anything, we wanted to make sure that we had about a year's worth of valid data before we started introducing, unbundling of rates, variable time of usage rates, things of that nature. So thank you very much. And yes, sir, you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what we're looking at.
Awesome. So Do all of these procedures and policies for solar install also apply to wind turbine system or mixed solar plus wind turbine systems?
Yeah, I'll take, if someone does get a wind system approved through the county, yeah, it would connect and be permitted in the same process.
Awesome, thank you for that. So this is an installation question. On a flat roof, can the solar panels be held down with ballasts instead of drilling through and bolting to the roof?
That would be a question to pose to CDD, Community Development. They have their structural persons there who would answer that question best. And that their information is on the website also, or if you just call the customer service with the county, they can connect you back through to Community Services Division.
Awesome. So last question on Zoom is, if somebody wants to put a wind time on, oh, just kidding. That was not a question. Yes, to the people that are asking, this presentation is available later. This is the Q&A portion. And I think that's all the questions on Zoom. Does any, oh, right over here, other side. I didn't even notice you.
Just a quick answer for the person who asked about ballasted systems. My system is held down with a ballast and it is permitted in Los Alamos. So we didn't have any trouble with the permit at all. So I guess the answer is yes.
There you have it. Thank you. Awesome. Does anyone else have any questions in room? We're good on Zoom.
Cool.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
One of the things that we were considering is backup power in case the county's power goes down for a long time. And what I really have no idea of, and maybe you can tell me, what's the longest the power has been out here in Los Alamos? For days, weeks, hours?
The outages that we've experienced, we've had sections of the line during ice storms several years ago. The longest there was out, we had sections of town in the western area that were out for 24 hours. That was one of the longest outages that we've ever had. Typically an outage is between 1 and 4 hours, depending on the cause. But yeah, the longest I believe was the ice storms, 24-hour period.
Sure.
So was that over like the last 10 years?
I believe, what was it, Marez, like 4 years ago? Do you remember the big windstorm that knocked all the power lines down off New Mexico 4 and 502? That's the storm that was really bad in the western area. Am I right, Marez?
Yes. Yeah, it wasn't too long ago, 4 or 5 years ago or so. They had the ice storms during the night, and the western area took the brunt of the storm up Trinity and the upper Sandia area. The ski hill had a large number of ponderosas coming down. Even the fresh green trees were falling.
Awesome. That looks to be the end of our questions. So thank you everyone for joining us this evening. And thank you, huge thank you to Jordan and Stephen for sharing your knowledge with us.